My aunt recently asked me to explain all the different types of onions out there. How are they different, and when should you use each of them? Well, Aunt Lori, here's your answer. There are tons, and I mean tons, of varieties of onions out there. So my aunt's question is justified. How are all these different types different, and when should you use each of them? I'm going to cover 8 main types of onions: yellow, white, sweet, red, green, spring onions, leeks, and shallots. Whew, it's gonna be a lot. I'm gonna teach you how to clean them, how to cut them, and when to use them. All right, let's get going. The first type of onion that we're gonna talk about is the yellow onion, or it's sometimes also called a Spanish onion. This is your standard onion. It's the most common one that you're gonna see all around the grocery store. It's available year-round. And if you have a recipe that just says onion and doesn't clarify what kind, they usually mean a yellow onion. We usually keep at least a bag of these around at all times because they're just so versatile. You can eat them raw, but I like them in any kind of cooked dish. Whether you're making Italian or Mexican or Indian, whether you're sauteing them or grilling them or roasting them or caramelizing them. There are so many possibilities. The next onion we're going to talk about is a white onion, and as the name suggests, it's a lot whiter than a yellow onion. It's also going to be a lot stronger and sharper in flavor than a yellow onion. It really is just like, pow, you're eating an onion when you have a white onion. You can cook with it and use it in place of a yellow onion, but because of that stronger flavor, I maybe wouldn't suggest caramelizing it. That really sharp flavor is just not going to lend itself to a more sweet caramelized flavor. And because it's an onion that really just announces itself, I love using it raw, especially in salsa and pico de gallo or any kind of application where you're putting it on maybe like some sort of fatty meat like these turkey tacos or some kind of rich flavor of some kind. It really is going to balance that out nicely with a really sharper flavor. Next up is the sweet onion, or what's also called a vidalia onion. It kind of looks a little bit more yellow to me than a yellow onion does on the outside, so be careful about mixing these two up. But you'll notice that the skin is a little bit thinner than a yellow onion. It's much more papery and it's much more likely to flake off, so that'll be kind of a telltale sign there. Sweet onions are on the complete opposite spectrum as white onions. They're going to be more mild in flavor, a little bit sweeter as the name would suggest, although I'm not talking like candy sweet. This is still an onion, but it's just gonna have a much less sharper, less astringent flavor. You can use these onions in place of yellow onions as your everyday onion. My parents did. They just liked the flavor a lot better, so it's completely up to you and what you're looking for. I also really like them raw on sandwiches or salads. They're really great on burgers, or in my case, this barbecue sandwich. If you've ordered a burger from a restaurant and gotten those rings of onions that they bring with it, that they put on top of the bun all nicely displayed, those are usually going to be sweet onions. Last up in this group of what I like to call bulb onions is the red onion, and it's the brightly colored ones that you just can't miss. They are really great to use raw, especially on salads and sandwiches. You'll see them a lot. You can, of course, cook with red onions, but I think that they're best used on either extreme of cooking. So caramelized, which means low and slow for a long period of time, or with a really quick application of heat. So think like when you order fajitas at a restaurant and that plate comes out and it's smoking everywhere. Usually they've used red onions for that, where the onions have just had a flash of heat either on the grill or on the pan, and they're still retaining that strong bite. Red onions have such a great flavor. You really want to try to put them in dishes where that's going to be allowed to come through and where it's going to work really well in that dish. Red onions are also really great for pickling. I think it partially has to do with the color, because once you pickle them, they turn this really beautiful pink color that just brightens up any dish that you put them on. But I think also red onions' natural sweetness really lends itself nicely to pickling. These pickled onions will work on so many different things. I've seen them on tacos before, I've seen them on sandwiches. I will leave a recipe for these pickled onions down below and a bunch of other recipes as well for all the food that you're seeing here. So those are the 4 main types of onions that you've probably seen and are pretty familiar with. And because they have a similar shape, they also have a similar preparation. To store them, you can put them on your counter in a bowl. They'll be totally fine there. But if you leave them for a little while, maybe a week, 2 weeks, they might start to get a little bit soft or a little bit brown just by being exposed to the elements. So if you see that start to happen, or if you want to preempt that, then I would throw them into your refrigerator. They're also really easy to chop and prepare for any dish. And if you've been struggling with this, I'm going to teach you some tricks. You don't need to wash onions at all. If you're looking to cut your onion into slices, which is what we want for this red onion, you want to start by cutting the onion in half. And then from there, you can see immediately that there is a root side and there's a pointy side. And then you want to pull off all of the papery outside, or if any of the skin has been exposed to the elements because the paper maybe has washed away or been rubbed off in the grocery store, then you want to make sure you pull that initial layer off as well. And usually that layer will maybe look a little discolored or a little wrinkly, so you'll kind of know if it's been exposed for a while. From there, you can choose to slice your onion in one of 2 ways. You can either start slicing towards the root end, and this will create what's called a half moon shape, or you can cut off the root end and turn the onion 90 degrees and start slicing in the other direction. When you do it this way, the curve is going to be a lot less pronounced, so it's all about what kind of shape you want your onion in. They usually cook up in exactly the same way. To dice your yellow onion, you want to start off in the same way by cutting your onion in half and peeling off the skin. I've already done that for this yellow onion, and I've kept the root end intact, which is really important when it comes to dicing because it's going to keep your onion all together. From here, you want to start making little slices in the onion, and how many cuts you make will depend on how large of a dice you're looking for. If you want a really big dice, then you're maybe only going to make 4 or 5. If you're looking for a really small dice, then you're going to make, I don't know, 8 or 10. I've never actually counted it. Be careful of your fingers. You do not want to go all the way to the root end. You do want to leave a little bit of space. And from there, you want to run your knife in the opposite direction, again, moving towards the root end. And how far apart you make those cuts will again determine how large your dice is going to be. And voila, you have a perfectly diced onion. All right, so those are the standard regular onions. Let's get into some fun ones. First up is green onions, or also called scallions. These are long and thin. They have one side that is white with roots attached, and then it'll slowly ombre into a nice dark green color at the other end. I love using green onions because it's kind of like getting 2 onions in one. You have the white side, which tend to be a lot stronger in flavor, not at the level of a white onion, but maybe around a yellow to a sweet onion. And then you have the green parts, which are a lot more mild and delicate. To prep them, you just want to wash them with water and make sure that you've gotten any kind of dirt that might be on there off of the onion. Green onions can come in a variety of widths, and these ones are definitely on the larger side. You can cut them in one of 2 ways. You can either cut them into little coin pieces, so cut off the roots first, and then just run your knife through and make thin little slices into these circles. You can make them as wide or as thin as you want them. Or you can cut them what's called on the bias. So this means you're cutting them into large diagonal pieces. You want to move them into a kind of diagonal line. If it's helpful, you can take your knife and line them up this way, just to make sure that when you cut them like this, therefore, you're not going to have like a really tiny nub on this side. Like, let me show you, if you had them lined up perfectly, if you go like this, then you can see that this onion is going to have a really, really tiny piece compared to the other onion. So if you move them into a kind of diagonal, then when you cut them like this, you can see that those pieces are going to be exactly the same size. Green onions work great raw or cooked. I love them sliced up into a salad, any kind of salad, green salad or potato salad. It adds just a really great small bite of onion in there. And I think it also blends in better with all the different ingredients than a normal bulb onion would. Green onions also work really great as a topping or a garnish, and you'll see this a lot in restaurants as well, like for example on a breakfast potato hash or even on this beef charred braise that we made. In this sense, they're kind of like parsley but with more of a kick. They just add that nice raw, stronger flavor that helps to balance out a cooked dish and make it feel a little bit fresher. And as I said, they work great in any cooked dish. You'll see these a lot, especially in Asian cooking. If you've ever gotten pad thai from a restaurant, those long green onions that are in there are going to be scallions. Or I made these scallion pancakes that work really amazing as well. You'll also see scallions a lot in baking, for example, in like green onion biscuits or scones or any kind of savory baking. They work really great there as well. You can cook with them in just about any application, but you want to keep in mind that they are a lot more delicate than a regular yellow onion. And also because it is like getting 2 onions in one, those 2 parts of that onion are going to have a slightly different makeup. The white side of the onion is going to be a lot stronger and sturdier, so you can add that in earlier to your dish, whereas the green parts are going to wilt really quickly. So you usually want to add that at the very end, maybe with only 2 to 3 minutes left if you want to cook those at all. Next up is leeks. Now these might look kind of large and scary, but they're actually extremely delicate. You can usually find these in your grocery store, although sometimes it is a little dependent on the season. Right now in spring, they are definitely in season. And they're also the onion that's most finicky in terms of prep. Leeks have all of these really small layers, and because they grow in sandy soil, all of that dirt tends to get into all of those different layers. So you want to be really thorough when it comes to cleaning it. You want to take it and cut off the root end and also the top part. So you want to find the part where the color starts to change into more light green or white, and also feel for where that layer kind of starts to soften up. And at that point you want to cut, and unfortunately you just have to discard the rest of that. From there, you want to take your leek and you want to cut it in half, and then you just want to slice them up into those half moon shapes. From there, you want to transfer the leeks to a deep bowl filled with cold water. You'll notice that the leeks are going to start to float on top, and you want to make sure that you break them up so that all those different layers are exposed. Let this sit for at least 5 minutes, and you'll notice that all of the sediment and dirt will fall to the bottom of the bowl. From there, you want to take a mesh strainer, although mine is definitely a little bit too big for this bowl, or you can just use your hands. Transfer the leeks to a plate with a paper towel and let them dry thoroughly. And then you're ready to cook with it. Leeks work really great in cooked dishes, and they work best in dishes where the flavors are not too bold, where the leek is really allowed to stand out. Because leeks really do have an extraordinarily delicate flavor. So you'll often see leeks in things like this simple pasta that I made, where I just put Parmesan, black pepper, some white wine, and some parsley in there, and that's it. So super simple, it really lets the leeks shine through. Or you might also see leeks in soups, like a chicken noodle soup, it would be awesome in there, or in risottos. And again, it's not that you can't use leek in place of like a yellow onion or even a green onion, you're just not gonna get as much out of it. That flavor, because it is so delicate, is just not going to come through. And if you leave it on a heat for a really long time, because those layers are so thin, it's more likely to just completely disintegrate into your dish rather than be able to stand up to it. Our second to last onion is the spring onion, and they're kind of like green onions, but with a few major differences. You'll notice that it's a lot larger than a green onion, with a lot more of those green shoots coming off of it, and those green parts are significantly longer, almost snake-like. They're also a much more seasonal onion. You're more likely to find them at your farmer's market than in the grocery store, and you can only find them really in the spring season, hence spring onion. I honestly see this onion as if a leek and a green onion had a baby, because it really pulls elements from both of those different types of onions. And you can cook with it or use it raw in the same way that you would use a green onion or a leek. It'll apply in both situations, both cooked and raw, and it has those thin layers and that delicate flavor, so it really lends itself to those green onion and leek recipes. Last but not least is the shallot. This looks kind of like a red onion on the inside, but it's significantly more delicate in flavor and significantly smaller. To cut it, treat it like you would a bulb onion. So you want to take off the skin, and from there you want to cut in both directions in that cross-hatch way that we talked about earlier. And most recipes will call for shallots to be cut in a really small dice. Shallots are really, really great raw. You'll see them a lot in different kinds of dressings, like this balsamic dressing, which I'll link below. Along those lines, shallot is also really great for pickling. That quick pickle recipe that I've linked below would work great for shallots as well as the red onions. Shallots are also really great for deep frying. If you've ever gotten those tangled onion straws that you'll see on burgers or sandwiches, those are going to be shallots. You can absolutely use shallots for cooking as well, but a lot of times you'll want to use them in the same way that you would leeks, in a dish where nothing is going to overpower it too much, where you are looking for more delicate flavors rather than really strong ones. So those are 8 main types of onions, but there are a lot more varieties out there, and especially right now in the spring, they are popping up out of the ground all over the place. So there's still a lot of different kinds out there. So if you have any questions about anything that I didn't cover, let me know in the comments down below. Well, that's our video for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something new, hit that like button down below. It really does make a difference for my channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the little bell icon to be notified next time I post. And I'll see you next time on Clockwork Kitchen. Bye for now.